Okay, this is a walkthrough for the Chapter 3 review. So for the very first question, it says solve the system by graphing, and then we're going to use this graph over here. And then obviously we'll have to select the correct choice. So the first thing that I want to do is get both of these in slope-intercept form. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it's going to be a lot more helpful to do that, to be able to graph them. Okay? So to get it into slope-intercept form, we want y on one side and we want everything else on the other side. So on the first one, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides and then divide everything by 2, right, to get y by itself. So if I do that, I get y equals, we get negative 3x plus 6 and divide that by 2, right? So if we divide by 2, we get y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 3. So if we want to graph that, we know that our y-intercept's at 3. And then we know we have a negative 3 over 2. So we go down 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2. Right? So that'll be our first line. That's equation A. Right? That's our A equation. So our B equation, we have to do the same thing. Get y on one side. So I think what I'm going to do is subtract 12 on both sides, and then we'll divide by a negative 4 on both sides. So if I do that, we get y equals, let's see, 6x minus 12 over a negative 4. And it looks like if I do that, I'm going to get the same equation as I did above, right? So it's going to be the exact same line. So I know if they're the exact same line, I'm going to have an infinite number of solutions. So that would be letter B. Okay, number 2, it says the formulas below are for the cost and revenue functions for a company that manufactures and sells small radios. So my cost function, so basically how much it started to get started making radios, well, it was a $90,000 startup cost, and it cost $40 for each radio. And then my revenue, well, we make $45 for every radio that we sell. So if I wanted to write that into words, or our formula, our profit function, or how much we profit, is equal to our revenue minus how much it costs. Okay. So it says use the formulas shown to write the company's profit function, right? So that's this right here, selling X radios, and then find the company's profit if 21,000 radios are produced and sold. Right, so our profit function is equal to our revenue, which is 45x, minus our cost. So in this case, it's 90,000 plus 40x, right? So we have to distribute this negative sign to both of these. So we should end up, after we combine our like terms, we get P of x is equal to 5x minus 90,000. Okay, so B says, so that's for part A, right? Part B says the company's profit from selling 21,000 radios is how much dollars, right? So all we have to do is plug 21,000 into X and we'll get our answer. So P of 21,000 is equal to 5 times 21,000 minus 90,000. So if I do that in my calculator, 5 times 21,000 minus 90,000, we get a profit of, looks like $15,000. Okay. 3 says solve this by the system of, by the method of our choice. So I think what I want to do here is I see that at the top we have a 1/4 x, and on the bottom we have a 1/2 x, right? So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply the top by 2. And the reason I'm doing that is because then I get 1/2 x here and I have a 1/2 x here. So what I'm going to do is I'll rewrite the first one. So I have 1/2 x minus 2 over 25y equals 8 over 5. And I'm going to subtract the bottom part, 1/2 x minus 1 over 5 y equals 1. All right, so I'm going to subtract all of that. So if I subtract, my x's cancel. My y's, it looks like I'll have a negative 7 over 25y over 25y. And if I subtract these two, I'll get 3/5. Okay. Okay, after I've done that, I can multiply both sides by 25 over 7, negative 25 over 7. So if I do that, I get 75 on the top. So I get y equals a negative 75 over 35. And if we want to, we can simplify that, but I'm going to leave it as is. So you can simplify that. And then all we need to do now is, we have this, so we can plug it back into one of the equations and solve for x. So I'm going to plug this back into the bottom one here. So I get 1/2 x minus 1/5 y. And in this case, we can substitute in y because we know it's negative 75 over 35. And that equals 1. So what we can do now is we can multiply these two together. So on the bottom, we get 35 multiplied by 5. And then we'll get a positive number for that, right? So we get 1/2 x plus 75 over 175. That equals to 1. Right, so I'll subtract that on both sides. So I get 1/2 x equals, 100 over 175. And then after that, we can multiply both sides by 2. So we get x equals 200 over 175. Right, so that's our answer for x, that's our answer for y. And you can definitely simplify both of those, but I'll leave it out of this just for now. So my exact solution is this and this, right? So my exact solution is 200 over 175, comma, negative 75 over 35. So answer A. Okay. On the next page, this one says, things did not go quite as planned. You invested $21,020. Part of it in a stock at 12% interest. However, the interest of the money suffered a 5% loss. So it says if your total annual income from both investments was $1,856, how much was invested at each rate? So it says that the rest of the money suffered a 5% loss. So we're going to have two different equations, right? Or a little bit, something like that. So it says how much money was invested at a 12% interest. Well, we know that we had 0.12 multiplied by x, and then we have minus 0.05 y equals the amount of interest we made, right? So this is the 12% gain, this is the 5% loss, and together we made a profit of $1,856, right? And we know the total amount that we invested for x and y, so x and y, the total amount we invested was $21,020. Right, so we have two different equations that are happening at the same time, and since we have two variables and two equations, we can just solve this. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to solve for, let's solve for x here. So I'm going to subtract y on both sides. Right, so this equation becomes x equals $21,020 minus y. Right? And now that we have that, we can substitute what x equals to up into here. And the reason we're doing that is so we just have one variable. Right? So we'll have 0.12, and then x is $21,020 minus y minus 0.05y. That's equal to our interest, right? How much we made. Okay. So after I do that, now what I can do is just solve for y, right? So we'll distribute the 0.12 to each of them, add the y's together, and that equals our interest still. So if I do that, we should get a negative 0.17y after we add those together. and then 0.12 times the 21,000 number is equal to 2,522.40, right? And that's still equal to our interest, right? So it's equal to the same thing. And then now we can solve for y, right? So we're going to subtract this on both sides, and then we'll divide by a negative 0.17 on both sides. So subtract that on both sides, we get negative 0.17y equals negative 666.4. Divide by a negative 0.17 on both sides, we get y equals $3,920, right? So that's how much was invested for y, and y is our 5% loss, right? So that's how much we invested in y. And then x, we can just solve for that, right? We already know what y is equal to in this equation, so we just do 21,000 minus how much we invested in y, and we'll get how much is we invested in x, right? Or how much we got on that 12% interest. So if I do that, we get $17,100, right? And you can quickly just verify that this is correct. If you just add these two together, you'll see it adds up to that $21,020. Okay. Number 5, it says Matt and Anna are frequent flyers on the Fast and Go Airlines. They often fly between two cities that are a distance of 1,680 miles apart. So it says on one particular trip, they flew with the wind and the trip took 4 hours. And then on the return trip, the wind was behind them and it only took 3.5 hours. So it says find the speed of the wind and the speed of the plane in still air. Right, so this is very similar to the ones that we've had before where we're going downstream on a river, right? Or if you're in like a speedboat in the ocean, right, and you're going away from shore. So we'll model this very similarly to those two problems that we've done before. Okay? So it took them 4 hours to go 1,680 miles, right? And it took them 4 hours because their still speed, right? That's their still speed for x, and we knew the wind was against them, right? Because they flew into the wind. So we have to subtract out the speed of that wind. Right? So that's our first equation. Our second equation, it only took them 3.5 hours this time, but the wind was with them, right? So it's x plus y, because it's pushing them forward faster. And that still equals the same amount of miles. So this is another simultaneous equation, right? So what we can do is solve for these, right? So just like we've done before, we can solve for them. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and then do the same thing over here, but divide by 3.5 rather, right? So in this equation, we'll have x minus y is equal to that divided by 4. So we get 420. And on the right side, if I divide both sides by 3.5, we'll get 480. So we get x plus y equals, actually I'll write it over here. We get x plus y equals 480. Now notice I line these up, and there's a reason that I did that. So see, we have a negative y and a positive y here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add these together, right? Because we know that the y's will cancel. So if I do that, we get 2x, the y's cancel, equals, add these together, we get 900. Right? So now I can solve for x, we get x equals 450. X equals 450. And now we can substitute that back in to find out what y equals. And I think I'll just do it in this equation, or I'll do it in this one right here. Right, so we substitute 450 back in. We'll have to subtract that on both sides, so we'll get y equals 30. Okay. So the wind speed is 30 miles an hour, because that's our y. And the speed of the plane is x, which is 450 miles per hour. Okay. Number 6, we can solve this by the method of our choice. I think I'm going to do the addition one again because I see that these y's are going to cancel pretty easily. But I think what I'm going to do to manipulate these equations is I'm going to divide both sides by 5 on the first one and divide both sides by 5 on the second one, right? So if I do that, this divided by 5 cancels. 25 divided by 5 is equal to 5, right? Same thing on here, divide 5, that cancels on that side. This becomes a negative 3. Okay. I'll add these two together, so I'll get 2x on this side. The y's will cancel. Add these together, we get 2. So we get 2x equals 2, and x equals 1. Okay. So easy enough for x. And then we can just substitute that back in for y. So I'll do that on the first equation here. I'll substitute 1 in. We get 1 plus y equals 5, so we'll subtract 1 on both sides. Get y equals 4. So our solution here is 1, 4. Okay. Let's look at the next one. So the next one, I think one thing interesting that I notice is if I move this y to this side, we'll get, let's see, we'll get x minus 2y equals 9, right? And what if I multiply both sides by negative 2, right? Because I'll get these x's to match. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 2 here. If I do that, I get a negative 2x plus 4y equals a negative 18. And notice that this equation right here, after I manipulated it a little bit, looks exactly like this one right over here. Right, so they're the exact same line. And since they're the exact same line, I have infinitely many solutions. So letter B is your answer there. Okay. The next one says, okay, so for number 8 here, we have this gold problem, right? So we've talked about this before. We've had similar problems. So if we have this gold, right, and we have, let's see, we have a 14 karat gold, right, which is approximately 58%. But all we have to mix together are two different golds, an 18 karat that contains 75% gold and a 12 karat that contains 50% of the gold, right? So how much, the question is, how much do we have to mix together for this 50% and 75% gold to make a 14 karat gold bracelet that weighs 300 grams? Okay? So my first equation is, well, I have to make some amount of the first one, so the 14 karat, and some amount of the 18 karat, or sorry, I'm sorry, the 12 and the 18 karat, right? So X is my 12, Y is my 18. I have to mix some amount of those together to get 300 grams total, okay? But my second equation now is, well, I have to have some amount of this 50% gold, so that's my 12 karat again, and some amount of this 75% gold, right, to get a concentration of 58% gold, right? And we know that there's a total of 300 grams in each one. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to solve for this equation. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to multiply this bottom one by negative 2. And the reason I'm multiplying the bottom one by negative 2 is because the x's will cancel when I add them together, right? So I'll keep the top one the same. The bottom one becomes a negative x minus 1.5y equals, multiply those two together, and then we'll multiply by negative 2. So 0.58 times 300. Multiply that by negative 2, and we get negative 348. Okay? Now we can add those together. When we add those together, those cancel. The y's become a negative 0.5y, and that's equal to 300 minus, or sorry, yeah, 300 plus a negative 348. So we get a negative 48. Solve for y, so we'll divide by a negative 0.5 on both sides. We'll get y equals a positive 96. And if y equals a positive 96, we can substitute that back into the first equation and find out that x is equal to 300 minus 96, which is 204. Okay? So we know x is our first one, right, the 75% gold. So we need 204 grams there, and we need 96 of the 12 karat. Okay? So we'll move on to number 9 now. So number 9 says you invest in a new play. The cost as an overhead is $26,250 plus production costs of $2,500 per performance. A sold out performance brings in $3,125. So it says in this exercise, let X represent the number of sold out performances. C is your cost function, R is your revenue function, and then determine the break-even point. Okay? So my cost function, how much it costs. So my first cost is the initial setup, right? So that's $26,250. Okay, so I know that. And I also know that it costs, so I'm going to add to that how much it costs for each performance, which is 2,500. So 2,500x. Okay. In my revenue function, well, I make $3,125, right? So $3,125 per performance. Okay. And remember our break-even point, it's just where these two are equal, right? Where the cost is equal to the revenue. So I can set these equal to each other. So set these equal to each other. Okay. And then we just solve for x here, right? So I'm going to subtract 2,500 from both sides. So we get 625x is equal to 26,250. And then we divide by 625 on both sides. So 26,250 divided by 625. We get x equals 42. So that's our break-even point, it's 42. And then describe what that means. Well, I've already told you, right? The break-even point is just where the cost and the revenue are equal. Okay.